Okay, everybody, I'm going to run through this last page of the review packet. You guys will be all set for your test on Monday. Let's start with number 10, inequality. So I want to subtract the 1 over to the other side. So I get 6 over x minus 1 minus 6 over x minus 1 less than or equal to 0. All right, now I got to make this look like a fraction, and I'm going to create a common denominator. So this is going to need an x. This is going to need an x minus 1. And this guy I got to cram in both, x and x minus 1. So this now becomes 6x all over x minus 1, minus 6 times x minus 1, minus both. Less than or equal to 0. All right, now up in here I'm going to distribute this. This becomes 6x minus 6. This here would be x squared minus x. So I'm going to clean all this up. I've got all over, let's see here, we got all over one denominator. It's going to be 6x minus, and when you're subtracting, remember all these signs are going to change. So it's going to be minus 6x plus 6. Same deal here. This is minus. These all are going to change. Minus x squared plus x all over all of this. Now I'm going to clean this up. 6x's will go. So I get 6 minus x squared plus x less than or equal to 0. Then I'm going to write this in the correct order. Negative x squared plus x plus 6. Now I do not like this negative out in front, so what I'm going to do is factor out a negative 1. And then factor. And now at this point, I can draw my number line and start figuring out what the answers are going to be. All right, so we've got, this would be a 3. It's going to be a solid dot because there's a line underneath it. This is negative 2. Solid dot. X all by its lonesome is 0, but it's got to be an open circle because that's in the denominator, and we can't have zeros in the denominator. And then we also have positive 1, which would be about there. And I think for you guys, the easiest way to do this is testing our intervals. So let's try the number 4. Now I'm going to plug the number 4 in here. We're going to keep track of how many negatives we have. If we have an odd number of negatives, we're going to have negatives. If we have an even number of negatives, the answer is positive. We want negatives. So let's try the number 4. We have 1 negative so far. Positive, 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 positive. All right, 1 negative means we're good. So we're going to go that way. And now I'm going to plug in the number 2. We're going to keep track of negatives this time. Negative. If I plug a 2 in here, I'm going to get a negative. Positive, positive, positive. All right, that 2 negatives is positive, so I'm going to leave that alone. Now I'm going to try half. Negative, negative, positive, positive, negative. Okay. Now I'm going to try negative 1. Negative. That would be the negative 1 plus 3 would be negative 4, so negative. Positive, negative, and negative. So that's positive because there's 4. Now negative 3. Negative, 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 negative. 5 negatives means we're going down. So your answer to this one would be negative infinity to negative 2 solid bracket, or the union from 0 to 1 soft brackets, or 3 to infinity. And that's the answer to number 10. Now, let's take a look at number 11. And that's just a simplifying question. And what I'm going to do is start factoring this thing. Now, this guy over here is a factoring by grouping question. What you want to say to yourself is, what do these two have in common? They have an x squared in common, and that leaves me with an x minus 3. Bring the sign in the middle, which is a plus. Now, remember there was a typo in this. This should have been an 18. Well, these two have a 6 in common, which leaves me with an x minus 3. So now, by factoring by grouping, we notice the GCF is x minus 3, and there's an x squared plus 6 left behind. This denominator, I can pull out an x times. This numerator, I can pull out a 2. Down here, I can pull out an x cubed. Now, division. Division we change to multiplication, and we multiply this by the reciprocal of this. So that means the piece in the denominator will now go into the numerator. This guy down here factors its difference of perfect squares, factors into 4 minus x, 4 plus x. And now we need to factor him. What's interesting about this guy is that all three pieces have a 2 in common, and that would leave me with an x squared plus 2x minus 8. And then that can be factored. So down here I'm going to put a 2, and this will factor into an x plus 4, x minus 2. And now once we're at this stage, I can start crossing things off. So let's start simplifying. X minus 3, x minus 3. X minus 2. These 2's right here can go. X plus 4, 4 plus x. They're written in backwards order, but they mean exactly the same thing, so they can go. And finally, x minus 4 and 4 minus x. Now it's interesting because this is the negation of this one. So in this one, if I pull out a negative 1, it becomes x minus 4. So this guy can cross off with this guy, leaving a negative 1 behind. You could have done the negative 1 either up here or down here. It doesn't matter. So finally, let's write down our final answer. We have a negative 1, an x squared plus 6, all over, we have an x and an x cubed, which would be x to the 4th. This negative, again, can either be up here or down here. It doesn't matter. All right, next one. We have a radical equation, and it's important to keep in mind that for radical equations, you must isolate the radical. So I'm going to start off by subtracting the 11x over, which gives us x squared plus x minus 1 equals negative 4x plus 3. Now, the way you solve a radical equation is by squaring both sides. Now, what's interesting is that on this side, the radical will go away. However, on this side, it's important to keep in mind we're squaring all of this. So that means you're going to write this parenthesis twice and then distribute. Okay. Oh, I just threw my pen. So now, here we go. X squared plus x minus 1 equals, I'm going to distribute this, 16x squared minus 12x minus 12x plus 9. Okay, so I'm going to clean this up a little bit. And now I'm going to set it equal to 0 because it's a quadratic. So I'm subtracting or moving everything over to this side. Minus 25x plus 10. Now, what's interesting about this is all these pieces have a 5 in common. So we can divide, because it's set equal to 0, divide every single piece through by 5. And we end up with 3x squared minus 5x plus 2. So now at this point you can either use the quadratic formula or factor this. This factors into 3x and x. It looks like it's going to be, let's see here, minus 1 minus 2 in order to get the negative 5 in the middle. So that means our two possible answers are 2/3 and 1. All right, now we need to check and see if they both work into the original equation. So let's do our check. I'm going to start with the number 1 because it's easier to plug in. So I'm going to do 1 squared plus 1 minus 1 plus 11 times 1. That equal all this. So let's see here. 1 plus 1 is 2. So this would be radical 1 plus 11. Is that going to equal 7 plus 3? Well, this is going to be 12. This is going to be a 10, so it doesn't work. So I'm going to reject the 1. Now we're going to try 2/3 and see if we have to reject both. So here we go. So 2/3 squared plus 2/3 minus 1 plus 11 times 2/3 equals 7 times 2/3 plus 3. Okay. So this makes 4/9 plus 2/3 minus 1 plus, remember what I said about making things look like fractions? This would be 22/3. Put this over 1. This would be 14/3 plus 3/1. I'm going to make that over 1 and this 1/1 and then make lots of common denominators now. I'm going to make my common denominator in here 9. So this is 4/9 plus 6/9 minus 9/9 plus 22/3. Over here, I'm going to make my common denominator 3. So now this makes 10/9 minus 9/9 is 1/9 equals, this would be 23/3. Well, the square root of 1/9 is 1/3. You can see this. Will this equal 23/3? Sure does. So we circle the 2/3. So that's that one. I'm going to put a box around this. All right, and the last one is another one of these exponent practice ones because you guys need it. To start off with, 16x to the 8th has got to, both of these have to be raised to the 3/4 power. So right off the bat, I have 16 to the 3/4 times x. Now, let's talk about this. When you raise a power to a power, you multiply. So this is an 8. So I'm going to do 8/1 times 3/4. So this 4 knocks the 8 off. So we end up with 6. So that becomes 16 to the 3/4 times x to the 6 down there. All over x squared plus y squared. Okay. Minus this parenthesis squared. So that means we're going to write that twice. All right, so we got to start cleaning this thing up. Well, let's do 16 to the 3/4, right? So what's the 4th root of 16? 2. What's 2 cubed? 8. So this becomes 8 x to the 6 all over x squared plus y squared minus, all right, now I'm going to distribute this off to the side. Let's see here. So I want to do x plus y, x plus y. So I do first, multiply the x to the x, then this x to the y. Then this y to the x, and this y to the y. So this means, in this bracket, I'm going to put x squared plus 2xy plus y squared. All right, so now I'm subtracting all of this off. So let's write down what we have. We have 8x to the 6 all over x squared plus y squared. Now remember, all these signs are going to change because we're subtracting. So minus x squared minus 2xy minus y squared. Right now, look what's going to happen. X squared minus x squared go. Y squared minus y squared go. Gives me negative 2xy. And now all we have to do is simplify this. Well, the 2 can attack the 8. use a different color. X can knock off one of these x's. So it looks like I have as my final answer 4x to the fifth all over negative y. And that looks like my final answer. And that is the last page of the review. So you guys have plenty of stuff now to go over.